We are recording this presentation, so please self-mute and turn off your camera if you do not wish to be on the recording. These slides and recording will be posted to our website after the presentation. Again, we'll just give it a couple more minutes and I'll run through the spiel again, and then we'll get on with the presentation. Again, so this is the webinar for the Mass CEC Equity Workforce Planning and Capacity Grants RFP, which is currently open. Again, we are recording this presentation, so please mute yourself and turn off your camera if you do not wish to be on the recording. The slides and this recording will be posted on our website. If you would like, you could put your name, title, and email into the chat if you'd like to connect with other folks on the call. Just some housekeeping that we do have space built into the presentation to pause for questions. So please wait until those times to come off mute to ask questions. Feel free at any point to put questions into the chat as the presentation progresses, and one of our staff members that are assisting to manage the meeting we'll answer your question there, or we'll call it out to the entire group when we get to the pause for Q&A. So we'll just give it one more minute. A couple more folks are coming in. Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. So if we can go to the next slide. So just do some quick introduction. So I'm Ben Christensen. I'm a program manager with the workforce equity team at Mass CEC. I just wanted to call out some of the other equity staff that are on this call. Edward Shea, who's our senior program manager, workforce equity team. Nitra Ford is another program manager. Camilla Bacalad, who's our program coordinator, and Lauren Morimoto, who is our equity team fellow for this term. Here's a quick look at our agenda and what we'll be covering. Like I said, a reminder that there'll be 2 spaces for questions and answers. So we ask that you just hold back questions until then if you'd like to come off mute. Otherwise, feel free to post questions into the chat, and one of my team members will be monitoring that to help answer any questions or call them out when we get to the question and answer period. So first, I'll be covering the background of the funding, and then later my colleague Anitra will be discussing kind of the mechanisms to apply. Next slide, please. So just a little background about the funding opportunity. The RFP is an outcome of the Workforce Equity Fund, which was established in 2021 by the Mass Legislature, which sets aside $12 million annually to support the clean energy sector and ensuring an equitable and inclusive industry in Massachusetts. Mass CEC does this through supporting minority women-owned business enterprises who will be able to do business within the clean energy sector, and then also hopefully be able to expand their hiring as they grow. And in parallel, support job training pipelines in clean energy occupations. The specific RFP is to assist those who may not have a fully baked program yet, but this allows them to apply for funding to help move towards implementation to develop that idea. Next slide, please. we're supporting specific populations with this RFP. You can follow the QR code there to get more information. The first targeted population are individuals who live in environmental justice neighborhoods. So these are individuals who are disproportionately negatively impacted by climate change. And you can see in the bullets what is legislated as meeting the criteria for an environmental justice neighborhood. And you can follow, like I said, that QR code will show you an interactive map so you can really dial in on the specific neighborhoods around the Commonwealth. Also, members of federally recognized or state acknowledged tribes and former workers from the fossil fuel industry. And the last, just go back, please. And just the last category of just members of underrepresented communities in the clean energy workforce. So if you can provide data showing members of a certain group are underrepresented in the clean energy workforce, we would accept that as well. Next slide, please. So in addition to the targeted populations, the other group of focus are minority or women-owned business enterprises. By both the legislation and this RFP, MWBEs is defined as 51% owned and dominantly controlled by minority or women principals. To qualify, they must have staff, be located or have staff in Massachusetts, but they do not need to be registered as an MWBE by the state, as long as they meet the criteria of SDO or any other certifying body recognized by the state. Next slide, please. So aside from the target populations and MWBEs, another requirement to qualify for one of our grants, your grant must be focused in one of our 4 climate critical sectors. So net zero grid, which includes solar and microgrids, high performance buildings, so anything around decarbonization, heat pumps, weatherization, offshore wind, and clean transportation. So electric vehicles and associated infrastructure, e-bikes, and other forms of clean transportation. And you can see the more clearly defined definitions on page 10 of the RFP. Next slide, please. Over the summer, MassDEC published a workforce needs assessment for the clean energy sector called Powering the Future. If you have not read the report, please follow the QR code on the left to download a copy of the report. The QR code on the right is for the data workbook to better dial in into regional data that is illustrated graphically in the report. So the crux of the report is in its finding is that the state required additional 38,000 workers before the end of the decade to meet the Massachusetts 2030 and 2050 carbon reduction goals. So which creates greater urgency to grow and expand our existing pool of workers in businesses in the field. And the link has also been posted in the chat for that needs assessment. Thank you, Camilla. Here are some examples of some targeted occupations within climate critical sectors if you're planning to develop pipeline training programs. There's a clear need within the building trades to build additional capacity. Also want to call out that there are positions outside of the trades in customer service, business development, that are also supporting the clean energy industry, so that as long as they are providing those services, in a clean energy firm, they would be considered clean energy jobs. Next slide, please. And here are some examples of targeted MWBEs within climate critical sectors. There's a breadth of organizations working in this space, from engineering firms and consultants, but the trades are where the largest numbers of MWBE companies and sole proprietorships that are currently working. So solar installers, HVAC, construction, and the like. Next slide, please. So this is the RFP for the Equity Workforce Planning Capacity Grants. That RFP went live earlier this month. If you do not have a copy of the RFP, please follow the QR code on the screen. I think also a link will be posted in the chat. We have almost $900,000 in available funding, and these grants will be awarded on a rolling basis. The purpose of the planning grants is to develop an implementation plan to execute under future training and implementation funding for a job training or MWB support program. For the capacity grants, implementation might not necessarily be the end goal, but adding either staff or special equipment to expand existing programming into the clean energy sector. And next slide, please. So in the application, you'll see 3 distinct programming strands. Strand A is a career pathway training meant to create workforce pipelines and job training programs targeting populations we highlighted earlier. Strand B is clean energy career awareness. This strand is meant for career navigation, pre-apprenticeship programs. For our targeted populations, awareness around clean energy jobs may be low, so this strand allows organizations to create opportunities for exposure to the wide range of career opportunities. Strand C is for business support services for MWBEs, so creating programs for MWBEs to increase revenue or provide back-end support services to increase their productivity and output. Next slide, please. Thank you. So who's eligible to apply? So applicant eligibility requirements for this grant can be found on page 6 of the RFP. While we are looking for a lead applicant, we are looking for a lead applicant who must meet certain criteria, including having a Mass-based office or staffing and the ability to produce a certificate of good standing here in Massachusetts. Partnerships are strongly encouraged and may be looked at more favorably when scoring to make final determinations, and those partners don't necessarily have to be Massachusetts-based. Next slide, please. Here we see the award amount limits and timelines for both the planning and capacity grants. So award ranges for planning grants is $20,000 to $50,000. If you are requesting over $30,000, we would require a substantiation in the application justifying the higher end of that award range. For capacity grants, it's $30,000 to $150,000. Duration, so 6 to 12 months for a planning award, 1 to 2 years for capacity. The planning grants are to be utilized to solidify elements of your program design prior to implementation, while capacity grants will build in-house capabilities prior to implementation, or if you do not require full implementation funding, other funding options for successful delivery. And we'll pause here for question and answer period. Give it a standing 5 count, and if there's no questions, then we will move on. I appreciate your time, and I pass it on to Anitra.
Thanks, Ben. So last call for questions? No questions? All right. Well, let's get. Oh, go ahead, Alexandra. You remuted yourself by accident.
Hello. The capacity grants 1 to 2 years, but it's one grant for 2 years, right? One grant for 2 years, or one grant for 1 year and what for each year.
It would be one grant and one grant agreement for a total of 2 years.
I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Okay, I guess that's it. So let me talk to you about how you can apply. All right, so let's start with our application process. As you know, the RFP is available for review on our website. Please make sure that you review it all and all forms and attachments to understand this opportunity and its requirements. Thank you for coming. You've already attended the Mass CEC informational webinar. The next phase will offer office hours and or other informational resources. And then please feel free to contact us with questions or to discuss your ideas via email at Workforce Mass CEC. And finally, submit all your forms and attachments adhering to the word limits, format requirements, and other instructions within the RFP by email to Workforce Mass CEC by 11:59 p.m. on May 20th, 2024. And please use the Equity Workforce planning / capacity grant application in your subject line so it doesn't get lost. To be as transparent as possible, we are providing you with our selection criteria, which can also be found on page 14 of the RFR. Applicant and partner experience and qualifications will be the first thing you are scored on. Next will be target occupations, businesses, and populations. Third, it will be strength of initial plan or capacity building concept. Please note that a relevant budget that accurately reflects both direct and indirect costs will come into play here. Commitment to maximizing partnerships, resources, and the TA offered by Mass CEC. And finally, your diversity approaches. As Ben has already covered earlier, the eligible funding can be used for either planning grants or capacity. And within planning grants, you can use the funding to identify partners for supportive services, clarify curricular resources, plan implementation schedule for programming, and staff time devoted to program planning. Within capacity grants, the funding can be used for curriculum development to expand an existing program, equipment and supplies for the training program, staff time devoted to capacity building, or to possibly run a pilot cohort. Activities that are not eligible for funding are costs associated with preparing your planning or capacity grant proposal. Purchase or lease of a venue space or equipment intended for general operating purposes, and activities that occur before or following the term of the awarded grant. I would like to kind of highlight that although the funding cannot be used for the lease of a venue space or equipment intended for general operating purposes, the funding can be used to lease a venue space or equipment needed specifically for your program, if that makes any sense. Next slide, please. All right, the application packet. A completed application packet must contain the following: Attachment 1, which is the applicant's signature and acceptance form. Attachment 2, which is the Equity Workforce Planning and Capacity Grant application and letters of support or MOUs when applicable. Attachment 3 would then be your budget and payment schedule, and attachment 4 is a sample agreement. Application standards. Responses must adhere to the instructions within each attachment. Attachments 1 and 2 must be submitted as separate documents in PDF or Word format. Attachment 3, budget and payment schedule, must be submitted as an Excel file on the template provided in the tabs. Additional attachments will not be considered during the review and scoring process. I would like to note that and more information on the attachments can be found on page 13. And I would like to call out specifically that if your budget includes a partner who will be accessing 30% or more of this funding, we would need a separate budget from that. Okay, next slide. All right, so here is a sample of the budget. Please make sure you fill in both of the tabs of attachment 3. Each line should have a rate and a quantity unit. Say, for instance, you are planning something that would then have 2 training stipends to do 2 different kinds of programs. Make sure that you call those out separately so that we can see that each of your budget items match your narrative in attachment 2. Failure to fill out both tabs, provide rates, and provide narratives that match proposed activities may result in a less favorable score and may lead to the application being viewed as incomplete. Next slide. And here is another sample of some budget line items. Please make sure that you enter your calculated fringe rate in the yellow box. And then over in the final column, make sure that you're calling out all of the different things that comprise that number. And then please enter your indirect rate in the orange box. And again, please use the final column to provide us with a description. Next slide. The payment schedule, which would be attachment 3. The payment schedule should be set up chronologically by invoice number and not by task. Use the task number reference chart, which I'll show you in the next slide, to fill in this payment schedule. Certain tasks may span across the course of a grant, so will appear in multiple invoices, and that's okay. Invoices should be quarterly or set up to be not more than 5 or 6 invoices annually. Again, I would like to raise this to the top. Failure to fill in the payment schedule may result in a less favorable score or may lead to the application as being viewed as incomplete. Next slide. So here are some payment schedule tips. Make sure to complete all sections of the payment schedule tab in the budget. Milestones and deliverables will depend on your scope of work. Use the task number reference chart to fill out your payment schedule, and task numbers and descriptions of milestones and deliverables should match the narrative in attachment 2. I would also like to call out that if you are, for instance, not planning on doing any a task that is listed on this chart, it is okay to skip it. However, please maintain our numbering. And so you might have to add in additional subtask numbers so that it aligns with your description in attachment 2, and that's okay, but just try to keep the numbers the same as they are, and we'll make adjustments if there's anything missing when it comes time to do your award. Next slide, please. All right, so the timeline. So questions are due via Workforce Mass CEC, and answers posted to Mass CEC website ongoing. We will probably close the questions a couple of weeks before the final due date, but just know that they're ongoing and you can constantly ask questions, see what has been answered, etc. up through that point. The pre-application webinar is today, and we will be providing you with office hours for you to come ask questions and potentially even network for partners during this application process. Proposals again are due on May 20th, 2024 at 11:59 p.m. We are offering priority due dates, so if you have submitted an application by October 16th, we will review your application by October 23rd. And if you have submitted your application by February 5th. We will be reviewing it by April 12th. Note that review does not include a decision. And so after we review and score your applications, we will then ask for interviews as needed. And then you will be notified of your reward approximately 6 to 8 weeks after your submission. Office hours and networking. Office hours are drop-in, so no registration is needed. It's a place for you to ask questions, discuss your specific proposals, and meet other potential applicants who could potentially be partners. The dates are listed here. You will see it's mostly a Tuesday and Thursday schedule. We do offer meetings at noon and then after the normal workday at 5:30 p.m. When networking, it's okay to go ahead and drop your name, organization, and contact information in the chat, and to also sign up to the partnership list by sending your contact name and org type and your focus sector, to workforcemasscec.com. Any questions? Go ahead,
Hello.
Alexandra, jump right in.
Hello. Is the information sessions, are they via Zoom?
They will most likely be Teams meetings, but they will
Okay,
still
all
be
right.
virtual. Yes.
Yeah, virtual. Thank you.
Any other questions? Alexandra, were you trying to raise your hand? Go ahead.
Yes, hello. Yeah, I'm curious about the last round. I mean, I understood that we were going to get feedback on our applications the last round. I mean, it would be very useful in this round to know what happened in the last round and how that was received and how, what its strengths and weaknesses were. Can you give me some advice about how to go about finding that out?
Yes, I would actually recommend that you email the Workforce Mass email and ask for a feedback meeting. Sheila?
Good afternoon. I was wondering, could you tell me if there are any age restrictions on either the planning or the capacity building for the program? Is this something that could be career exploration with middle school youth, or are you looking for job placements or outcomes?
That is a very good question, and there is an opportunity to serve youth with this grant in the planning and capacity. And I think that if you had any further questions that kind of like delved into the details of that, I would recommend that you come to office hours so that we would be able to kind of delve into what your ideas are around that.
Perfect. Great. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Any other questions regarding the application process? All right, then. Thank you for, oh, sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
If we currently have a planning grant, do you anticipate that we should wait until May to submit? Because we were thinking of the early deadline of the February, but I didn't know if we needed to wait until the planning grant is mostly completed.
As long as it is a completely separate project You do not have to wait, because the idea of offering you a planning grant is that once the current planning grant is complete and you have a plan, that your next move would be that you would be applying for an implementation grant. And so you wouldn't need to apply for another planning grant for the same project. But if you have a completely different project, you're like, hey, we have another opportunity to set this up, then go ahead and apply. And again, I will encourage you to come to office hours as well to talk about what your additional plan is. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think it would be a continuation, so we would do the planning and then the implementation would be the next step. So it would be a similar project, it's just phase 2 of that.
Yes, I will encourage you to come to office hours so we can kind of like really
Okay.
talk that out.
Yep, sounds great.
Thank you. I don't want to be impatient, but I also don't want to keep you guys here. So if there's no more questions, I'm going to pass it off to Edward. Thank you.
Sure, it's going to be Camilla.
Yes, thanks, Anitra. So in addition to the workforce equity funding that we offer, we also have another resource, which is the Clean Energy Internship Program, where clean energy employers can apply for funding to get reimbursed for an intern's wages. So we reimburse up to $18 per hour or up to $4,320 per intern for an intern's clean energy internship. Our fall 2023 internship program is currently open, but unfortunately, we do have limited spots available right now that are reserved for employers or interns living in gateway cities. So if you're interested in this program, I encourage you to go on our website or scan the QR code on the right here to learn more information. This program is available all year round. So if you found another opportunity to hire an intern in another time, I encourage you to look at this program. It does follow a semester schedule, so it's open in the fall, spring, and summer sessions. Again, to reiterate, any questions can be sent to workforce@masscec.com, and we will try to get back to you as soon as possible and have those relevant questions posted on our website when it becomes available. Okay. Yeah. So this is the end of this webinar. Thank you all for attending the Planning and Capacity Grants RFP informational webinar, and we look forward to connecting with you again in the future. But before we end, I see a raised hand.
Hi, Camilla, it's JC. Yeah, I just want to ask one question. So this, just for clarification point, the opening for the intern program are specifically for interns that live in gateway cities and are employers that are based. Does it have to be both or one or the other?
So it can be either or. So either a gateway city employer living or located in the gateway city or an intern living in the gateway city. And that is the available funding that we have right now for the fall session, because we have like limited funding, but in the future it will also be open to non-gateway cities and interns.
Perfect. I just want to clarify what's open now.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Great webinar, by the way.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sarah?
Hi there. I missed the beginning and I wanted to just kind of like catch up on the notes. Are you going to make the slides for this whole webinar available?
Yes, so we will send the slides to the attendees and it will also be available on our website.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Because all those QR codes are very helpful to have on hand in one doc. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there aren't any questions left, okay. Oh, I see JC,
Okay,
you
I've
raised
got
your
one
hand
more,
again.
one more question. This may be for Ed or
Okay.
eligibility for this particular grant. If you are already a Mass EC grant recipient, are you excluded from applying for this grant, or are there any exclusions around? I didn't hear that being discussed, and I just want to make sure that we're positioning ourselves, thinking about it in the right way.
So JC, if so long as what you're proposing in the new application is not already funded under your existing grants, it would be considered. And the only sort of stipulation there would be, would have to meet the rest of the general eligibility requirements under the equity fund, which is the right target populations, as well as the right target sectors. And also, if what you're proposing skirts close to your existing project, like an expansion of that project, there may be some consideration of the level of success that you've had thus far in your existing grant, and that would be the only real caveat. But we do welcome expansion requests.
Okay, thank you so much.
So to coin the fun phrase, you don't have to go home, but you shouldn't stay here. But we will leave it open for another minute or two if anyone has any burning last second questions.
Thanks so much. Have a great week, you guys.
Thank you.